So, Maestro Del Toro, I'm so pleased to have you.
Happy to see you.
Honestly, I love your work since a long time, and that's purely sincere. I discovered Chronos a long time ago, and I follow every step of your films. And when I heard that you're gonna be here, I rewatch all your movies, and I tried to
dig.
No, it was a great pleasure, and I tried to dig a little bit deeper in your own work. But what I would like to know is, what brings you to movies exactly? The first thing.
When I was a child, I was already in love with movies, but I never understood that the movies were made by people. I thought movies were things that happened, and they were like somebody was there to film them, or I had a very strange understanding of movies. I didn't know that you could work in them. And then, little by little, I started thinking about it and reading the credits. I remember I had a book as a child that was talking about the many professions you could do as an adult. And one of them was stunt man. And I said, I want to be a stunt man. And then another one was director. And I thought, oh, I want to be a director. And I was, when I was 8, I got my father's camera, Super 8, and I started shooting
short films?
Little figures, of my toys. And I sent the Super 8 cartridge to the pharmacy, and the pharmacy sent it to Mexico City, and it came back 10 days later, and I put it on my father's projector, and I saw the images, and it's the best I've ever felt up until the Oscar. It's the best I've ever felt making a movie.
So, but that's very, very important, because in fact I realized that you are obsessed with the Alchemist idea of cinema, and that's really a transformation. You're talking about something you can transform.
It's true.
You shoot something and then you project something, and something appears. It's just like make a feeling evolve or a matter. You start your first feature, Chronos, with an Alchemist citation, quote. You get sensibilized with the Alchemist world, and why you put that to open Chronos, for example.
Well, there was there was a re-evaluation of alchemy in the 70s in Europe and Spain, and a re-evaluation of genre and all that, and there was a lot of occult books that came out in the 70s during the Neo weekend and the sort of reawakening of the spiritual and the occult that came with the hippie movement.
You were a kid at that moment.
I was, but I was already, I bought my first horror book when I was like 8 or 7. And I was already buying, I read so much as a kid. Most of the things I read before age 15. I read sometimes.
Why?
I was very.
You were outcast, or you?
No, well, I was strange. I was very strange.
You're still very strange.
Very strange. But my teenage years are very normal. Like from 14 to 20, I'm popular. I'm happy. I still read and watch weird movies and all that. But I'm very socially out. But when I was a child, I was very in. And I read my father's library complete when I was a child. I read an encyclopedia complete, and I read an encyclopedia of art, an encyclopedia of health. I was a hypochondriac because I thought I had every disease. But at the same time, when I started reading about alchemy, and I understood that alchemy was not, people think of alchemy as the transmutation of lead to gold. But the reality is that it's a spiritual quest. And it's about transmuting the vile matter into sublime, eternal. Gold is symbolic of the eternal. And I thought that was very interesting. And I thought, obviously, the basis of alchemy are really full of universal symbols in the most Jungian sense, And I also thought that genre that I loved as a kid, horror, science fiction, fantasy, could be transmuted into something sublime.
But that idea irrigate all your films.
Yes, no, I still do it. I mean, one thing that is very hard for people to reconcile with me is that, to me, the story and the characters are not the movie. The movie is the images and the sound and the secret emotions that are lodged in images and sound. And it's the more stupid the idea that is the basis of the movie, the more sublime I try to make it, you know? And I don't worry about changing. And like if I make an action movie like Blade, I make an action movie.
Yeah, even in Pacific Rim, you know?
Yeah.
But we're gonna talk about all that because there is so much to say about your work and your philosophy. And that's something I would like to express here in that show, because I think sometimes people have some idea of your films a little bit stereotype, especially with the blockbuster. But in fact, it's so deep and so generous, and there is a great philosophy within. Yeah. But to go back to your childhood.
But let me tell you one thing. When you were saying that, there is two things. One is part of what you learn with alchemy is that you don't write it to be read easily. You write it so that people that are not going to be initiated in it, they can read it as something completely different. That's why alchemy is written sometimes with fake routes, fake roads, things that lead you astray, and the real initiated people read it the right way. That's why Pan's Labyrinth, to me, the alchemy of art is seeing, and it's in all my movies, but in Pan's Labyrinth, it opens with an eye being put in the statue, blah, 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 and it closes with saying, she left little traces of her time in the world for those that know where to look. Yeah. And that, to me, is the secret. I want to make my movies, and people that don't want to look at them again, they go, giant monsters, giant robots, action, whatever, horror, fantasy, whatever, I don't care. But the people that want to go in deeper, that know where to look, they find a lot of more layers, even in the blockbuster movies. Yeah. There was an anecdote that was very beautiful about Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton wrote his first few treatises before the theory of color. He wrote them in Latin. And somebody said to him, why did you make them in Latin? They are so hard to read. And he said, they were not easy to write. Why should they be easy to read? You know?
To go back to your childhood, because of course there is the alchemy, but also there is your great belief in the beyond, in the au-delà, in the ghost.
Yes.
And that question of the ghost also irrigate all your films. Yes. Is that true that when you are a kid, you make a kind of a deal with the ghost?
My uncle.
Yes, that's something I heard or I read, I don't know. True. You said, leave me alone, please, don't scare me.
Oh, the monster.
Yes. And I will pay you back later when I was
your friend. Yes. I did it when I was in the crib. I was, because I had what is called lucid dreaming. Yeah. So I would wake up in the dream. Yeah. But I would be in the same place I was actually asleep. And I would see things in the room, but they were not real, but they were real because I was dreaming that I was in that bedroom. And I would try to go to the bathroom, and I was so afraid because I would see monsters in the corners, and my parents had a shaggy rug, you know, with green, and I saw a sea of fingers that were waiting for me to jump out of the crib to pull me down, and I would pee in my bed. And my mother was very angry. And one night I got up and I said in the crib, I said, if you let me go to the bathroom, I will be your friend forever. And it stayed. You declared to the Golden Globe that Ghost saved your life 3 times. Yeah, Monsters, yeah. Monster. But I didn't see your shorts. I would love to see them. They're horrible. Yeah. But what brings you to the industry, it's Chronos in '93. Yeah. That movie opens with an Alchemist citation, quote. That's very significant, I think. How you start making Chronos? How it happened? I always was interested in telling stories that were very normal, meaning very, very not original. You had seen them before, but seeing them from another point of view. See, if I was interested in doing a movie about Waterloo, I would make that movie from the point of view of the guy that cleans Napoleon pants, because that's interesting. And it's the same story, same battle, ends the same way, but you're doing it through another side. And in Chronos, I thought that there was an aspect that was very, the addiction of vampirism was very much like a junkie. At the same time, it was very solitary. It was like onanism, you know? And those were aspects I hadn't seen about vampirism. And I thought vampirism was a way to show the relationships between the family. And I remember when I was a child, I read a book in which they describe Eastern European vampirism. And the roots, vampires in Eastern Europe are very different from the way people think of them. Some of them don't even drink the blood. They are corpses inhabited by a filthy spirit, blah, blah. But one of the things that was interesting is the vampire, the reanimated corpse, comes back home and starts by vampirizing his whole family, those that he loves the most. And then they spread into the world to the people they love. So it was an infection of love. And I thought my grandmother and I, when I was a child, we had a very tense love-hate relationship, but I loved her. And I thought it would be great to talk about how I felt about my grandmother, because she had a stroke.
Yeah.
And she was paralyzed, and I had to go visit her, and I felt like a child was taking care of the grandma. And I started thinking I'll do it through a fairy tale with vampires, about a little girl that takes care of her grandmother, or her grandfather.
You decline all those figures movie after movie, then after, you know, that there is the relationship between the grandfather and the kids, the point of view of the kids. Also, you reinvent the idea of the vampire.
As a very sad figure.
Yes, just like Romero in a very naturalistic way did with Martin. But you did something...
That's exactly right. That's a big influence in Chronos, and it's a big influence, Mario Bava, Black Sabbath.
Yes. Yeah. There is something very, very important in Chronos, is the Federico Lupi, who you made 2 movies with him, the grandfather.
3?
3, sorry. At the end, he make his own choice.
Yes, that's in every movie I do.
And that's your quest of immortality, in a way, no? Yeah. That's your quest of being a real, true, sincere artist.
Yes.
The character has to be himself.
Yes, and has to choose. I mean, I think, to me, the movie was interesting because everybody was concerned with immortality, except the girl.
Yeah.
And that was the only character that was immortal, because she didn't care about dying. But everybody else, and that's why Federico Lupi controls death by choosing it.
Yeah.
By saying, I'll do it, you know? This is who I am. That's why he says, I am Jesus Grace. Because he finally is who he wants to be.
That's an amazing idea. And I think you declined that idea even in Pacific Rim.
In Hellboy.
In Hellboy.
Yeah.
And
in Shape of Water.
Yeah, Shape of Water. But the difference with Shape of Water, and that's probably because of you have to face so many obstacles to be what you are today. Yeah. And I'm sure it's beyond understanding all difficulties you have to face, and you had to face. But Shape of Water is much more written. There is something. There is less determinism in the other movies. The anti Christopher Nolan, in a way, you know. There is no. It's not written. There is no determinism.
I'm going to tell you a very horrible metaphor. It's horrible, and I apologize in advance. But you can only vomit what you eat. So when you're a kid, you eat all this horror and all this, and then you vomit it, but you didn't. It doesn't come out of a will. You know, you vomit, and then you organize the little pieces.
You organize your vomit.
Yes, you organize all that came out, but you don't say, "Oh, now I'm gonna vomit the turkey from 3 years ago." It's something that comes out and is visceral. There is two aspects to the storytelling. One is compulsive, and the other one is organizational, and they are both equally valid. One is that the expulsion. Meaning, I need to tell this movie.
Yeah.
There is no preconceived notion. You don't say, I'm going to make this movie to whatever. You need to make the movie. And then the second one is when you realize why you are doing it. And you organize it a little thematically, but very little. I mean, you do. And then the next step is to organize the audiovisual information to support that theme. And then there is one deeper layer where you don't know what you're talking about. And it came out from that first compulsion.
Yeah, but you were aware of that at the time when you made Chronos?
Yes.
You were aware, thematically, you were aware of what you... Yeah?
Yes, because I was a critic. For many years as a teenager, I was a teenage... It was like out of a bad young adult novel, Guillermo Del Toro, young teenage critic. And I wrote a book on Alfred Hitchcock when I was 21. And I was on radio and TV, and I was used to analyzing film. I was used to analyzing the formal, meaning lenses, gear, storytelling, and the thematic. And I really thought it was very interesting to know that no matter, let me put it this way, if you are completely 100% dedicated to organizing your films thematically, still 50%, 60% of the movie is submerged into your subconscious. You cannot see it, you're blind to it. So you can trust the organization because it will never dissect the movie. It will always be a living animal because it came from your gut. But also, you have to make sure that you make movies only that you want to please yourself and represent yourself in an urgent way. It doesn't matter if it's Blade or Hellboy or whatever it is. How it looks to the outside world, it shouldn't matter. It matters how it feels to you. And those two impulses I had since Chronos. I did very bad shorts. And you learn a lot on the shorts. I did 8 Super 8s, 1 16mm, 135, 3 TV programs, 4.
So you are a brain director, you know?
No,
no, because
50-50.
Because if you design all your movie very, very cautiously, you design everything. It's insane the way, for example, Pacific Rim or Crimson Peak is designed with the color and the camera movement and the texture, and it's obsessive. It's much like Hitchcock, you know.
Very painterly.
Yes.
See, I can tell you this. If I hadn't done Blade 2, somebody else would have made Blade 2, but they wouldn't have made that Blade 2.
No, that's for
sure.
sure.
I mean, something different, because I came up with Nomak being tragic and the vampiric anatomy and all that. It would have been a less kinky Blade 2. If somebody else had done Hellboy, it would have been much different tone because it's very different from the comic.
Yeah.
You know.
But you had some issue with Mignola, no?
Well, I think that the second movie went so away from the comic that I think rightfully he felt this is not the comic anymore.
This is not my Hellboy.
This is not, and I would understand.
But Guillermo, before talking about Hellboy, I would love to talk very shortly about Mimic, because I think Mimic is very important for you because it brings you to the edge of...
It's probably the most important movie after the first.
Yes, because I'm sure you learned a lot from that experience.
Yes.
At that time, because we have to...
It was horrible, but good.
It's a very schizophrenic movie, and we can understand why.
I can tell you the beginning of Mimic, I said 3 things. I said, I don't want any explosions.
Yeah.
I don't want any guns. And I want the main character, male main character, to be black. I lost all those 3 battles. The movie has guns, huge explosion, huge, not a little explosion, huge explosion. And the main character became Jeremy Northam, along with Mira Sorvino, because to me what was beautiful was to make a movie in which humanity was saved. And I wanted Andrew Brower in the role that went to Jeremy Northam, and Mira and the kid. So they were a mixed family.
Yeah, but when you watch Blade 2, you can imagine what could have been Mimic. But just to specify, to be a little bit more specific about Mimic, it was the 90s. You were working with the Weinstein brothers, especially Bob, who runs Dimension Films, and
mostly with Bob.
Yes, and they hire you after Chronos to make Mimic, and
because I couldn't raise the money for Devil's Backbone.
Yes,
Mexican.
Because at the beginning, Devil Backbone was supposed to be a Mexican movie.
Mexican movie, yes. The idea was this. Chronos was incredibly hard to make because the political organisms that support auteur films, they don't understand fantasy. That's not serious. That's not auteur. So it took us 4+ years to get the money, where any other movie took a year and a half. And they asked storyboards. I had to make the machine on my own workshop. I had to do many, many more things than normal. And finally, we make it, and they don't support us to go to Cannes. They say, you will go on your own to Cannes. 2 other Mexican movies went with the tickets paid, the hotel paid.
And that's you.
And not us. And they said, you go on your own. And we went on our own to Cannes. And we were in an apartment living 6 people. And the budget for promotion of Kronos was 10 posters and 1 roll of Scotch tape. And I arrive and I'm gluing the posters in the bar. And can I glue my poster in the bar? And we won the Critics' Week. Yeah. And then we came back and we won 9 Academy Awards in Mexico. And we won 10 more or 12 more prizes international. And then I went with Devil's Backbone and they said, we will not support it. Again. After all that.
And that's why you made Mimic?
Well, I had been...
Because you have to live, you have to pay the bills.
No, I had developed Mimic as a short film. Yeah. Because originally Bob Weinstein said he was going to make a movie called Light Years. And it was going to be, let me see, Bryan Singer, myself, and another 2 directors, I don't remember right now, Scott Ross, I think. Yes. And I took the short story Mimic, which I read and I liked because it was about these insects that pose as humans. And I did the short, and I was reading Bob Weinstein the scene where she's taken by the insect and flies away. And he went, that's a feature, I want to do it into a feature. And I said, no, because I thought, I don't want to be here doing that story 2 years, too long. But nothing happened. I wrote Monte Cristo for Francis Coppola. I wrote Mephisto's Bridge for Columbia. I wrote like 4 other screenplays. And I even said to an executive at Sony, I said, please save me from making Mimic at Miramax because you can greenlight this movie, Mephisto's Bridge. Nothing happened. So finally Bob said, it's greenlit. And we started working, and it's the worst experience I've ever had. But you know, the thing is, when you come from a country that is not the US industry, you make movies because you have friends. You call your friends, they come to help you. And America is completely different exercise at an industrial level. You have to be a lone wolf, and you have to protect the movie. But what you learn is when to be completely, you say, this is the line, and you don't cross it, no matter what happens. And you're ready to be fired or to quit. And that's something you learned from. I learned it on Mimic, because if they smell weakness,
yes, it's a breach.
You're done. You're done. And if you give in on one decision that is little, that is crucial, and so going back, those 3 decisions, I lost all 3. But there was a moment I was looking at the dailies of Mimic. With Dan Lauston, who shot Shape of Water, Crimson Peak. Yeah, yeah. We were looking at the dailies, and there was a moment that was transcendental for me. And this has to do with alchemy. I realized the movie looked and sounded exactly as I wanted it. I had lost the battles of the story or this, and I thought, there's a layer there, a secret alchemical layer in the image and the sound that no one can touch, because no one goes that deep.
And tell me if I'm wrong, but what I read is that at one point you wanted to bring the insect intelligent.
Yes.
And Bob Weinstein said, no, that's bullshit.
No. The ending of the movie was very different. The ending of the movie was the male insect started walking with all 6 legs, grabbing the sides of the tunnel, and then started folding himself, and it became the perfect silhouette of a naked human being, and came out of the darkness and went to Mira Sorvino, and you saw he was like a Michelangelo's David with all the lines of the fragmentation. And he went to her and pointed and said, leave. Meaning he spoke and told her, go, we're done. We are going to look like humans. And I thought that was such a chilling ending, but we ended up with an explosion.
Of course.
But the worst battle, and I remember this, we were in a meeting, And Michael Phillips was one of the producers back then. And I remember it so horribly. We were sitting in the office, and he removed one of his loafers and was scratching his foot. And he says, because the original story was about scarabs, about beetles that lived in the barks of the Central Park trees, and they carried an infection. And he said, why don't we make them cockroaches? Because New York and the cockroaches. And I said, that's the worst idea, because no matter what I do to make the movie beautiful and spectacular, it's going to be a giant cockroach movie.
Yeah.
And I remember Bob Weinstein saying, you don't understand, you're from Mexico, but cockroaches and New Yorkers, they go together. It's a great idea. And I knew then, I said, should I leave?
Should I stay?
Or should I stay and make the best movie I can out of this?
Yeah.
I said, I'm going to stay. And I still think, I must tell you, I'm grateful for Mimic. Number one, it's better to have a movie that is not perfect, but you learned, and you have a second movie, than to have stayed with Kronos and never make another movie.
Yeah, of course.
Second,
Yes.
Bob kept telling me every day, move the camera, you're always static. And I started thinking, I'm gonna move the camera in a way that is symphonic, like one camera go, and it's always gonna be moving. And out of that came my style. What I did in Devil's Backbone, which is I call Devil's Backbone my first movie. It feels like my first movie. And I feel the same way about Shape of Water, like, oh, it's my first movie. Because things come together for the first time in certain areas. And in Devil's Backbone, the camera is exactly like I wanted it, and I couldn't have made it
if you didn't
Mimic.
went through that.
Yeah.
But
and I learned no. I said no.
No.
And I had huge fights, screaming from one side or the other of the set. Huge fights.
You get fired, no?
I got fired on a Friday, and on Monday I was rehired. So I was Saturday and Sunday out of the movie, and then Monday I was back in the movie.
But there is no reshoot done by Barnedal, and Robert Rodriguez. I heard they made some...
That was a second unit.
Yeah.
And it was very sad because the second unit is, I've never done second unit before or after Mimic.
Yeah.
Because of that.
Yeah.
It's a wasteful, every piece of action on Pacific or in Hellboy, I shoot myself. Because what I do is I send a camera and I let them set up, and I go and then approve the angles and say action, and it comes out. Because when we shot it, it was a complete waste of time. There was entire scenes that the second unit did that were either Robert or Ole that I had to reshoot completely, 100%, from scratch. And I said, we shot this scene twice because the way they would shoot didn't fit. Or there would be scenes where this angle would be Robert and this reverse would be me. And this angle would be Robert and this reverse would be me, because I needed to make it join the style of the movie. And Ole shot a lot of tests and things, and then he shot, there's one scene in the movie that is shot by Ole. It's the scene where she goes to her mentor, and they talk about the world is a much bigger lab.
Yeah.
You know, that scene is entirely his. I didn't touch it. And the rest is little things, little pieces that were shot at different times. But I hated the experience. But again, from then on, I said no second unit.
With the perspective of your other films, there is your mark. There is your mark.
There is, of course.
There is your obsession, the insect, the tunnel.
Of course.
And also...
Because those are very deep.
Yeah.
But I tell you that, Jim Cameron said to me, he said, I hate second unit. And I said, why? He said, because if it's bad, it's really irritating. And if it's good, it's doubly irritating. You know, and I think he's right. Because when, you know, I see that scene with the mentor, and I would have liked to shoot that scene. When you see my movies, every piece of action, no matter what it is, an insert, whatever, it's a splinter camera or it's completely done by me. And what it gives you, it actually makes my movies economically much more efficient.
Yeah. And in what state of mind you were after Mimic? You were desperate? Or?
Well, I didn't know back then. But I was finding very hard to find the next movie. And I learned later that they had spread so many ill rumors About,
what do you mean? What ill rumors?
Like about me being difficult to work with.
Yeah.
You know.
There is a book, the Bliskin book, you know.
Which is inaccurate.
Yes.
Because I refused to. They called me to be interviewed, and I said I don't talk about these things. And they interviewed somebody that they shouldn't have interviewed. But it's fine, you know.
It's past, you know.
It doesn't matter. What does it matter what one says about a man? It's not important. But I was really. I was thinking I'm not gonna make another movie.
Really?
Yeah. Because, three times that has happened to me. I knew I had that screenplay. I knew I had Monte Cristo. Nobody wanted to finance it. I mean, it's 5 years between Mimic and Devil's Backbone, and it's 5 years between Kronos and Mimic. That's a decade between the two, lost. And I wrote 6 screenplays or so.
Yeah,
and it doesn't matter really in the past. You know, what happens is I'm in Miami and Pedro Almodovar approaches me and says...
At the airport, no?
By the pool.
Yeah.
I was drinking a Diet Coke, and I hear, you're Guillermo Del Toro? I say, yes. He says, my name is Pedro Almodovar. I love Kronos. I would like to produce your next movie, if you feel like it. And I felt like it, of course. And I said, I'm going to take Devil's Backbone. I had read a screenplay by David Muñoz and Antonio Trasoras called The Bomb. Mm-hmm. And it was about an orphanage with a bomb in the middle and a ghost. And I said, I'm going to take that structure, and between the three of us are going to create a new screenplay with some of the ideas of Devil's Backbone and the title and all that. And we made it, but curiously, again, what you do with what you don't think. Originally, Devil's Backbone was a mountain.
Yeah.
Where the orphanage was. And we scouted through all of Spain, and there was no mountain with an orphanage. And I said, okay, I'm going to make it the back of the kids, of the fetuses. I changed it. I said, it's going to be about that, and it's going to be about the children nobody wants, and it dictated itself. It was a very different movie.
You put something in it which I think very unique. It's the dimension that a ghost could be an emotion.
Yes.
How you get that idea? Where it come from?
Themes, if you don't make them expressed in the movie, if they are not a thesis, if they are themes, they delineate the characters beautifully, you know? I think that when I did Shape of Water was about everybody that could speak couldn't relate really well, but the ones that don't speak relate very well because they have the same essence, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
In Devil's Backbone, I realized that it was about everybody having something that they don't talk about, that they don't, or they owe in the past, or they cannot get over. Like the bad guy, the ghost is his childhood and what happened to him, and he felt like a prince without a kingdom, you know? The Casares, Lupi, cannot tell her that he loves her, and blah, blah, blah. She lost a leg. Mm-hmm. She wanted to travel, and that's what organizes thematically. And then you know, I rewrote the opening and the ending, and I realized I wanted to make a movie about a ghost that told you, that was thematically the most complete ghost story you've ever seen. That's how I thought. I thought I want to make it creepy. I want to make it poetic. I want to make it sad. I want to make it about the past. I want to make it about the secrets. I want to make it about frustration. And, you know, that's...
But thematically, you open the movie with always the voiceover, but
always.
You ask a question. You ask the question about the ghost. What is a ghost? And you respond to that question.
Until the end.
No, on Crimson Peak.
Yes.
With the opening of Crimson Peak.
Yeah,
where
ghosts are real.
Yes. Is that...
They are very related.
Yeah, is that a personal quest? At that moment, do you think the same way on Devil's Backbone?
No, very different, because Crimson Peak, for many, many reasons, personally, is a movie that was spoke about love in a very tragic way.
Yeah.
I was thinking about love in that way, whereas Shape of Water thinks about it completely different. And it's one movie later, you know? And Devil's Backbone was thinking about, it's a very sad movie.
Yeah, it is.
All the movies I've done, be it Blade, Hellboy, all of them, even Pacific Rim, all the way to to Crimson Peak are about losing something.
Yeah.
And the first movie I do with hope is Shape of Water. But the three movies that I've done in my life where I say, this is my last movie, I'm not gonna do another movie after this, was Devil's Backbone, Pan's Labyrinth, and Shape of Water. And the three of them, I said, I'm gonna do one more movie, and then I don't care, and I'm gonna do everything I can to make it a great movie because I'm not gonna do any more.
But
each time things go well, so I do more.
But is that possible, Guillermo, that you stop making movies?
Oh yes, perfectly possible. I was having
what would you do?
David Cronenberg, and he said to me, you know, now the trade for me is either it's a movie that is worth you losing 2 years of life, or not. Because at the end of the day, we are, as I said in the Golden Globes, we have a deal with the devil that is particularly weird, that where we say, we'll give you 3 years of our life in exchange for one entry on IMDb. You know, that's the deal we did. It's a silly deal. So there is a moment in which I need to say, I mean, I want to reread Chekhov. I want to reread Mary Shelley, Victor Hugo. I want to rewatch as many movies as I can. I want to walk in the beach. I want to, so many things. And then you say, this movie is worth it. And then you make another one, you know? And it doesn't matter what movie it is. People say, well, those are the personal movies. All the fucking movies are personal. Come on.
But not for everybody.
Not for everybody, maybe. But look, a movie is not, you're not dating. It's a marriage.
Yeah.
It consumes you. It destroys you. Every movie I've done, except Devil's Backbone, where Almodovar forbid me to put any of my own money. He said, you're not putting a single cent of your own money. Every other movie, mimic. Hellboy 2, I put either my entire salary or part of my salary. Hellboy 1, I put so much of my salary, and I never made it back. Never made it back. So much of that when they say, do you want to do Hellboy 2? I said, you got to pay me that salary for the screenplay, or I don't make it. And then on Hellboy 2, I put money again. Crimson Peak, I put, I think, $500,000. You keep going. And in Shape of Water, my entire salary, except the union, all my salary went into the movie. So if you make a movie where you think, oh, I'm not going to put myself, don't make the movie. Don't make it. Why are you doing that? Go on vacation.
There is the question of faith, you know? There is a question of faith. Your faith.
Everything is faith.
Yes, but not for everybody.
For everybody. Whether they realize it or not, everything is an act of faith. And the only thing that destroys you is when you lose faith. And you can, yeah. Of course you can. I mean, people, the career sounds so good when you organize it. A life, a biography sounds so great. But the times you've been in the shed, and it's been horrible, and you lose, and there are so many. And those are the ones that people should talk about, because we live in a culture of success.
Yeah.
Everybody talks about success. Oh, they did this, and the movie made so much money and won this prize. No. I think the most beautiful thing you can talk for new generations is where you were without money, where you were without ideas, with no resources, when how many times somebody would say no. I mean, I can tell you, the times in my career in which I've been out are so many, where people won't finance it, people won't, 2 years ago, for the last 10 years, I've been trying to make Pinocchio. And 2 years ago, we were almost getting Pinocchio made, and they said, no, we won't give you the money because there's this monetary threshold and Pinocchio is above that budget. And that's when I said, Shape of Water, I said, how much do you want me to make it for? Because Shape of Water looks like a $70 million movie and was budgeted much higher. And then they said, we'll give you 19 and a half. And I said, fine, I'll make it happen. You know why it looks that big? Faith. Because I tell you another anecdote. Alejandro Iñárritu, we did a movie, a company called Cha Cha Cha. He did a movie called Beautiful.
Beautiful movie.
Beautiful movie. If I told you how much it cost, you would go, what? It was a very expensive movie. But he had total control. And then the movie didn't work the way he wanted it or we wanted it, it didn't reach the critical success he wanted or the audience. And he had a really great moment, and he said, I'm going to make a really small movie, which is Birdman. And when I saw Birdman, I said, that looks 50 times bigger than Beautiful. Yeah. 50 times more. And I said, and you did it for less? And he said, yeah. And then I realized budget is a state of mind. I did Kronos for two. Actually, 1.5.
Yeah, but at the time it was big money.
No, it was 1.5.
For first feature.
The back interest was 500,000. But budget is a state of mind. You know, if what I say to you, for example, if somebody comes to you and you're 21, and somebody tells you, I'm going to give you 19.5 million to make your movie, you go, what? Of course I'll do it. But if you're a crusty 50-year-old and you say, I need 25, you're screwed. So faith, you go, we're going to make it.
You made Blade 2 at a very peculiar time. It was quite visionary before the
superhero craze.
Yeah. What do you think about all the Marvel films today?
You know, I know one thing. The first Blade, Norrington's Blade, was the secret link to modern superhero movies. I think without that Blade, there would be no Matrix. Yeah. Without that, there would be no X-Men. Norrington...
And Spider-Man.
Yeah, but Norrington is the one that cracked the code.
Yeah.
For me, of the entire language.
The opening on Blade 1 is stunning.
It's stunning. And many scenes are stunning, you know? And the language of the hyper stunt, throwing her across the street from one roof to another. The fights are this marvelous fusion of kung fu and American action. I mean, it's a superior genre film and superb piece of filmmaking. You
ask for all the dailies, and you watch all the dailies.
I got a box like this with all the VHS dailies, and I watched all his dailies. And the one thing I saw is he did what he called, jokingly, he called it the Polish firing squad, which meant he had one camera facing the other. And when he laid out the cameras, but one was with a longer lens and a low position, and the other one was in a high position with a wider lens. So they could be looking at each other, and he could do like a kick and cut it really effectively. And I said one of my conditions on Blade 2 was no second unit. So I needed to know how to shoot that action. So I fragmented all his dailies, I made notes, and then the most complex shot on Blade 2 is one shot with 13 cameras. And I knew exactly where the cameras were going to cross each other. One was on a crane, one was on a track, and I edited the 13 shots in my head. And it's the scene in the club where they shoot at each other with the machine guns and all that, because I didn't have the money to do many takes. So we did it once, 13 cameras, one was handheld, hiding behind a column. All 13 cameras were perfect, and I said, I'm going to do it again because the makeup is not the right color. And my producer wanted to kill me, but I said, we're going to do it again, no matter what. But that is a movie that I learned so much.
But how you get the final cut on that movie? It was because of the success of The Devil Backbone?
No, because
how you deal to have that final?
This is the secret calendar of those two movies. I'm going to do Devil's Backbone, and the head of New Line Cinema, Bob Shea, says to me, I don't give a shit about your Spanish movie. You're going to shoot Blade, then you go and do your Spanish movie. And I said, if I say yes, I didn't learn anything on Mimic. So I said, listen to me. If anyone can shoot Blade 2 that is not me, he should shoot it. I don't care. I said, if you really want me, you wait for me.
And they wait.
They wait. But this is how they wait, which is very critical. They said, from the moment you wrap Devil's Backbone, you have 12 weeks to deliver your movie, and then you come for pre-production on Blade.
How you did it?
Devil's Backbone, on Mimic, I learned to cut on the day.
But it was a different time. You shot on film at that time?
No, yeah, but the Avid was already existing. Oh, yeah. So on Mimic, I started a practice that I continue to this day. If you come to visit me Friday, I have the entire movie cut up until the day before. I cut in my head. And I cut on the set with the video assist. I show it to the actors. I say 0, 1, 20 through 8 frames, cut there, and I learned it because when I was going to be fired from Mimic, and I knew it was coming, I said I'm going to cut all my material. So if I get fired, I can show people my movie, and that's what saved me. Because I went to New York and I showed the cut footage, because Mira said to them, if he leaves, I leave. And Quentin has seen the footage.
Quentin Tarantino.
And Quentin loved
because
the footage.
Tarantino was the boyfriend of Mia Sorvino.
And they said, oh,
at the time.
Show us the cut footage. So I showed them the cut footage on Saturday morning, and then they said, okay, you go back on Monday. And I saved myself, but Mira saved me. But anyway, to go back, Devil's Backbone, I shot so tight, I would say cut, and my editor said, can you wait 1 second before saying cut, because there was no protection, no coverage. And we were assembled. Almodovar was visiting us in the editing room every day because he said, it's cut? I said, yeah, it's cut. And he would see, he said, how did you? And it was really, in 12 weeks, we cut negative, we recorded, we mixed, everything. 12 weeks, and I went to AA2. But the problem is, then when Devil's Backbone came out, I was in post-production on Blade, and I didn't promote Devil's Backbone the right way. And I'm very sad to this day, because it could have been much better received, yeah.
Blade 2 was the precursor of all those Marvel well, we're living through now.
I was there when Marvel was trying to convince New Line to get Iron Man, to do Iron Man. And I remember they said, if he flies, he's so stupid, nobody will like it. So they passed on Iron Man with Tom Cruise. Yeah. Tom Cruise was going to be Tony Stark. And I remember nobody wanted, all the Marvel movies were up for grabs.
But what do you think about the Marvel world today?
I think it's an incredibly well-constructed world. I mean...
But artistically?
You know, to me, there is 2 levels of storytelling. One is the authorial storytelling and all that, and the other one is a producer-driven, brand-driven storytelling, which is the equivalent of the comics. When I used to go, as a kid, I would go and buy the weekly comic to find out what was happening, you know, to the kiosk. And I think Marvel has created its own brand and narrative and style. It's a house style, you know? But I think it's they're really, really well put together. Would I do a superhero movie now? No. I did them when they were not popular, when it was an act of defiance to do a comic book movie.
Yeah, but you did, when you did Blade 2, it's also the sum of all your obsession at that moment. Yeah. I think it's probably your most Lovecraftian movie.
Well, that and Hellboy 1.
Yes. Yeah. It's very, very unique in a way, and there is a Shambhala style. There is a quest of honor. I think Wesley Snipes in Blade is very is different. There is a lot of art.
Well, you know, it's funny enough, when I was going to do Blade 2, I had a meeting with Wesley in New York, and I met with him and I said, listen, I don't understand Blade at all. I said, if I was Blade, I would be friends with the vampires. I wouldn't kill them. I said, and I don't understand modern music. I said, for me, Pink Floyd, the Beatles, and Peter Gabriel are as edgy as I get. So I said, I trust you on Blade, and I will make the vampire the hero. I will make the movie, my movie will be the vampire will be the hero. And I will shoot you like a god. I will make sure your action is perfect. Yeah, yeah. I said, but I don't understand why he does it. So he says, I'll take care of that, and I'll take care of the...
Marco Beltrami, who made the music?
Marco, yeah.
And you work with Beltrami on Hellboy also?
On Mimic, Hellboy, and Blade. And every time we make a movie together, we break up.
Why?
Because, you know, every time it works, and then we reconcile.
Yes.
And in the 3 movies, I go, Marco, this is not working. See you Monday with whatever you want, but this is not working. And Monday he comes, and the music is fantastic, and we keep going, you know.
And how you work with your composer, and because it seems to be, you seem to have a very, very tight relationship with the composer, no?
Well, yeah. And the first thing is, the best relationships I had are Marco. I think he's a brilliant composer. Yeah. Javier Navarrete and Alexander Desplat. But Alexander is the most sync I've been in with a composer.
About Javier Navarrete.
I go to the movies, and I see El Mar, and the movie opens with a overture. Yeah. And it was so beautiful. I said, that's the composer. So we found him, and he agreed to do Devil's Backbone. And up until, I went to 3 musical sessions recording. One was Mimic, one was Hellboy 2, and the final one was with
Alexander Desplat.
And I didn't understand what I could do, because I just listened, and I was happy to be in Abbey Road with Hellboy 2 and with Desplat, but and Alexander said to me, no, take it like you direct every other element. He said, be there with me and say more emotion, less emotion.
And you did that only? You did that only on Shape of Water?
Only with Shape of Water. In the rest, I would say I like it, or more energy, or louder, or very. I didn't find my role in those sessions particularly satisfying until Alexander said to me, the music is, because the music was the voice of the main characters, of Sally and the fishman, you know, the amphibian god. And he said, you're directing an actor. So you go and direct more emotion, less emotion, more cold, less cold. And it was true. So particularly with the whistling. The whistling ended up being Alexander, because I said that your whistling is not perfect, but it's very human.
Yeah.
And I like it more than, we hired a very sophisticated whistler. And it was like, he was like super academic. It was like virtuoso whistling. And I said, it's too cold. You should do it. And Alexander is the one that whistles in the movie.
I thought you were so close to the composer.
On the developing of the themes, yes, because the way I understand music is very, very thematic, meaning like Prokofiev, you know, is each character gets a theme and then you combine them. It's very basic. But so, for example, with Alexander or with Javier, with Javier developing the lullaby of Pan's Labyrinth,
yeah,
he was more atonal. He was missing 2 or 3 notes, and I said, I need the lullaby to be something that you come out and you whistle, and we added, so it was that note, and that it was not there. Those 2 notes were not there, the penultimate notes. It jumped, and I said, no, it needs to be very, very melodic. Yeah. And we tried it and it worked. But then, for example, the piano that is in Pan's Labyrinth was played by a rheumatic 90-year-old pianist lady in Prague that she came out of retirement to play the piano. There was so much emotion.
I don't want to define your style, but it's the balance between extreme violence. When Vidal killed the 2 guys, you know, the 2 dissidents.
Yeah.
It's so brutal. So brutal.
But that's the point for me. I remember when we were touring with Pan's Labyrinth, we went to Santa Barbara Film Festival, which is very important for the Academy tour. And somebody said to me, your movie is so sublime, but it's also too violent. Yeah. And they said, and that is going to alienate
the audience.
A part of the audience. Yeah. And I said, that's fine. I said, that's fine. That's the part of the audience that I don't want.
You reach a kind of a big consecration because you were invited in official selection at Cannes. And I heard that Wong Kar-wai watched your movie with his glasses. Is that true?
Yes, I hear that same thing.
And I heard you were insanely mad.
No, what happened is with Pan's Labyrinth, the movie was very hard to make, and it's actually it was so hard to make that I also thought I'm not doing another one, and then we showed it in Cannes, and we got, and this is clogged, we got at least a 23-minute standing ovation. And I was so nervous. Alfonso Cuarón, who was there with me, saw me joking and saw me, you know, and he grabbed my shoulder and he said, let yourself be loved, relax. You're not enjoying this moment and it's not gonna come back. And he was right, and I started crying when he said that, and I was so moved by that, because 25 minutes, 23 minutes is what takes me to get from my house to the office. So somebody was clapping the whole time from my house to the office. And I was so happy with that. And everybody was saying he's gonna win this, he's gonna win that, and we didn't win anything. And by the time the ovation happened was the penultimate day at Cannes where the press had left. So all I was left with was a memory. But then, you know, I heard all sorts of rumors about the jury. But having been on a jury already at Cannes, I know that it's a very different situation. So I'm fine with that. I think that the movie was, when the movie was nominated for so many Oscars and it won so many recognition, for a movie that I didn't think it was going to connect. I didn't think, I thought Devil's Backbone was going to connect huge. You know, I thought this is such a beautiful, I'm in love with that movie. To me, it's Shape of Water, then Devil's Backbone, then Pan's Labyrinth. And it didn't connect, so you never know.
But Pan's Labyrinth is very sad.
It is very sad.
It's just like the ending of Breaking the Wave in another, you know, it's so sad. You're destroyed at the end of the movie.
It's a sense of loss. It's a sense of loss. Look, there are two things that happen. There is a type of movie I love, and I cannot describe what it is, but it's so beautiful that it makes you cry, you know, and because it's not the real world. There are a few movies like this, but you look at them and you say, this is so beautiful, and it's not the real world, and the world never will be like this movie, you know? And you weep. That happened to me with Brazil, with Terry Gilliam.
Yeah.
You know, I saw that movie and I was weeping because there was an artist expressed there as fully as Van Gogh would be expressed in a painting. And I was weeping the entirety of Brazil.
You believe in fairy?
Yes.
And you said that. Tell me,
I was friends with some ant.
Yeah, you said that you see insects just like fairies.
Yes. I used to watch this anthill in my grandmother's garden, and I thought I was very silly. I thought I was friends with one ant. And I would wait for the ant, and of course it was never the same ant, but that's how in I was as a kid. But the thing is, I think that when you are constructing a movie, you need to put together pieces that don't go together. You know, you have two instincts. One is the instinct that is domesticated by years of watching movies. Mm-hmm. That is the instinct you should never listen to. Not seriously, you can use it, but don't listen to it seriously. The second instinct is the one that says, no, you never do that. That's the one you should do. You know, that's the one that tells you that insects and fairies should go together, that the fisherman and the woman should have sex. You know, that they should talk about it the next day. The ghost should be sad. Moving, even if it stops being scary, is preferable.
Just like a clock, just like another great figure of your films, the clock. There is one direction and then the other direction to be current.
Of course, but you need to listen to the. I mean, I remember I was shooting Devil's Backbone and the script girl was next to me. And I said, if this, we were shooting a scene with Federico Lupi rubbing his finger, and I said, if this was an American movie, I would say cut now. I said, but it's not an American movie. Let's see where we go, you know? And we found the emotion. So it's the same. The instinct you need to listen to is the instinct that tells you that's not the way we should do it, and that's the way you should do it. And that's the fairy, as the bug as the fairy instinct in Devil's Backbone.
Yeah, there is something that you mentioned several times. It's the magic method. Yeah. The magic method comes from Crowley, Aleister Crowley, guy, that very strange guy.
Very strange.
Yes.
A swindler and a conman, but very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk a lot about the magic with a K at the end method to write your script, and how it works exactly, how you work.
Because I mean, I can read the tarot, I can read the I Ching. My mother was a reader of these things. She was taught by gypsies, and the only thing you do when you do these things is you open yourself. To open yourself is an invocation. It's not real. Magic is and isn't real. I cannot make a flower appear in my hand, no. But you are if you imagine yourself, you are a musical instrument that vibrates. There are so many musics in the universe, and you can change your tune to vibrate with one music or the other. The same thing that can make you feel suicidal can make you feel full of life. The exact same thing. So it's how you vibrate with that. And an invocation in magic, the first step in an invocation is to open yourself to that universe. And I think there is, and you basically say, tell me what I should do. Show me which way I go.
Yeah, but
don't have a preconceived notion.
Yeah, but to reach that possibility to be completely open, you have to be completely yourself.
Well, you have to trust. Look, if the movies you're making are movies somebody else is making, don't make them. But if the movies you're making nobody else would do, then you know you have the duty and a way of looking at the world that is unique, not good or bad, because unique is not necessarily good. But you say, I'm listening to something in the music that is similar but completely different. The analogy I use always is Andy Warhol or Roy Lichtenstein. You take a pop form like a comic or like a Campbell soup can, and your gaze, the way you look at things, transforms it, like Duchamp and the urinal. You transform it by the act of looking differently. And that's what the invocation and the magic is. You say to the world, show me where to go. And the characters and the story, you say, show me where to go. And they show you where to go.
How you do it, walking your script with your screenwriter?
There are two acts of artistic creation, synthesis and juxtaposition. Synthesis is the act of taking every single thing that is in your biography and in your knowledge of the art. Well, it can be fine painting, magazines, comics, music, opera, whatever. And you synthesize the elements that normally don't go together. It's like cooking. You say, I'm going to put sweet and sour and a piece of meat and a little butter, things that normally don't go together. That's synthesis. And then you give it your voice. That's synthesis. The other one is juxtaposition, which is you put two things that... Antagonistic, but they curiously inform each other. Like Dalí putting the lobster on top of the telephone. Of course they go together, but of course they never go together. That's the two acts. So what you do is you're always tuning to that, to the synthesis and the juxtaposition. You're tuned to those two impulses. And they are trustworthy because you know what you like. You never think of somebody else, the audience, the producers. The moment you let somebody else in your head, you lost.
But how you do that? Because it's, especially in the American industry, or everybody is trying to invade your brain.
You never do it. You don't do it.
How?
You say no. You say no, no matter what. Like you put yourself, look, you can only quit once. But if needed be, you have that weapon. Nobody's gonna make you make the movie. So you gotta do it, and you gotta say no.
And that's something you have in common with your friends Inarritu and Cuarón. Three of you build an amazing creative and artistic films into the indie industry.
Well, I tell you this, we talk about Mimic. It's so satisfactory to talk about a movie that happened in 1997, and I can tell you with complete certainty, since 1997, nobody has fucked with me. Nobody has made me do anything I don't want to do, ever again. Not one time. You know, no, I lie. I took a song out of Hellboy one. That I wanted.
Let's go back.
The credits.
Let's go back to Hellboy, because Hellboy was a kind of a dream for you.
I should have left that song.
You should have.
A really good song for the credits, and the producer said, "Oh, put music." And he said, "Your movie is too good for a pop song," and I wanted a love song at the end of Hellboy. And I said, "Oh yeah."
But you put it in Hellboy too. The great moment, you know, the great scene between Abe and Hellboy.
Yeah. So you were saying,
to get back to Hellboy, it was a dream. It was a dream fantasy to make it. No, you tried to make it a few years before, but it was too complicated. No,
well, Hellboy saved my life during Mimic, the comic book. The only good thing of Mimic was that.
You discovered Hellboy during the shooting of Mimic.
I already knew Mignola, and I saw Mignola mature Because first you have the Mignola that is in Rocket Raccoon, blah, 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 and then he gets to Cosmic Odyssey, which is sort of the beginning of Mignola. And then Mignola becomes Mignola in 2 comics, Dracula and Golden My Gaslight. That's where Mignola exists. And then he does Hellboy. The stories didn't make much sense, but it made sense. But the images that he was creating on Hellboy were so powerful. I thought this is pure genius. And that kept me alive on Mimic. And actually the Deep of Blacks on Mimic came a lot from the inking style of Mike, you know? And it kept me very alive. And then I tried to make it, but I tried to make it an autobiography. He's born the same day I was, many years before, October 9th. And he's sort of out of place in the world, but he knows that he can, no matter what his destiny was, he can choose what he wants to be. Because I believe in that completely. Yeah. I think we choose what we do with what we're given, you know? And I thought he wills himself into being a human. And that's what I wanted to do in my life, to will myself into being the director I wanted to be, or the person I wanted to be. And it's very personal, but I wrote it for Ron Perlman. And for 8 years, nobody wanted to finance it with Ron Perlman. But that's the meetings. For example, I had a meeting with a very powerful producer, a guy that runs one of the many, many franchises, huge guy. And he says, I love your movie, I love your screenplay, I want to support you. He says, but not with Ron Perlman. I said, then you don't love my movie, because my movie is with Ron Perlman. And then I'd rather not shoot it than shoot it with another actor. And those are the meetings that are important, because one by one, those meetings get you to the wrong side, you know? And I've been lost. There are movies and errors I've made, many, in casting. I don't want to be offensive to the actors that I cast wrongly, but some actors I cast wrongly, in not main parts, but secondary parts, and I regret it, you know? But you learn from those. But with Hellboy, I knew that Ron was, in my opinion, the only possible Hellboy ever.
In that kind of movie, it was kind of blockbuster for the industry, for everybody. You are very, very personal, and you're going to be very personal in Pacific Rim.
For me, it was, yeah.
It's a huge movie. It's 200 million budget.
195.
Without any license, and no. You have to be very bold, very bold to make that movie.
Yeah. Well, it was very crazy, and at the end of the day, the tragedy with that movie is that it was distributed during a war between Legendary and Warner's as a divorce, and that didn't help. But you know, that's neither here nor there. The movie is one of the movies I like the most that I made, and that's one of the ones I'm the proudest, because I was trying to make a movie. The character why I wanted to make the movie is not the main character. It's Mako. Kikuchi, yeah. I did it because I wanted to show that inside of us as adults lies a small child that was traumatized. And inside of the giant robot lies us. It's like a Russian doll, you know? 250 tall robot, a person and a child. And the one that controls the robot really is the child. So you need to heal the child to win the battle. I don't know if that's ultimately expressed or not the way I wanted, but that was the idea.
It is. To be completely honest, I see the movie on a theater when it gets a release, and I was a little bit, whoa, what is it? And when I rewatch it 2 days ago, especially watching all your movies, it makes sense.
The thing is, the safety device in my movies is if you watch them once and you don't like them, that's fine. If you watch them once and you like them and you watch them another time, you do find new layers. They are there. I think it's intelligently stupid, which is a crucial thing. Meaning, I don't want to. The solution to fight 250-foot tall monsters is not robots. You can use bunker busters. But you have to express complete faith in that premise. And it comes from fairy tales. Yeah. Is the power to declare that I speak about. When you say, once upon a time there was a world where giant robots fought monsters. That's it.
That's it.
But you don't want to go in, don't go in. Go watch another movie.
But that's something you always do. People need to believe immediately. And what is striking in Pacific Rim, it's an enormous budget and without any license. So the risk is terrifying. Yeah. And you ask to worldwide audience to believe immediately to the story. Yeah. And of course, it can be related to Transformers and all other Emmerich films.
Or the Godzilla movie.
The Godzilla movie, but it's something completely different. It's very intimate in a way, you know?
For me it is.
Yes. Yeah. And also visually, how you build that, because the robot, the way they fight, the way they do, the way they express themselves, it's so expressive. It's really amazing.
Well, when we were designing the robots, for example, we never reference other robots. We reference machines. We reference tanks, nuclear plants.
The Colossus also. I heard the Colossus about Goya, no?
Yeah, the giant.
Yes.
We also, if we needed to reference anything, I would do it obliquely. I would say Pad Labor, you know, which I like, but I didn't want them to be designed like Pad Labor. But there are cues of scale on Pad Labor that are so smart. You know, Gundam, Mazinger Z, the fact that that is the first piloted robot. What was the joy of that robot for me was that you were inside in the battle. And then I decide many things. I say, I don't want people on the street. I don't want crowds of people running. I want them all in refuges so that we don't have to be distracted by the bottom and the top. We stay at the top. Yeah. The robots become the scale, blah, blah, blah. And what you do is you design the movie intelligently. The movie may be super basic on the plot, but the depth of the world in terms of design, the depth of that layering, the last decal, is really profound and really serious. And I think there is a narrative power to it. And the best review I got on Pacific Rim, the one that understood it beautifully, was a guy went to see it with his girlfriend who was somewhat in the spectrum. And she understood things more in color and form. And she started saying, did you notice that Mako's past is all in blue? And that's why there's blue in her hair. Yeah. And then did you notice that there's no red like her shoe, which is her heart, until they come together, then there's red in the movie? And I thought, this is really the way.
You were aware of that before making the movie, especially in on Crimson Peak also, the color. It makes you just like a fetishist director, just like Hitchcock.
Well, the first time I became fully in control of that was Pan's Labyrinth. Devil's Backbone. What happened is Devil's Backbone is done in a minor note. Pan's Labyrinth is in a higher key. I mean,
in terms of control?
No, in terms of the way they are orchestrated. Devil's Backbone is beautifully designed, but it's not, the color and the form are not fully controlled. Pan's Labyrinth, they're fully controlled. They really are. We didn't shoot in real places. Everything is built. So we could control the shape. We made the chairs. We made the table. We made the doors. We made everything. So you could control things much more. We didn't shoot in existing locations except the woods and the caves. Even the interior cave is constructed. So you could design it more like an animated movie almost, you know? And from then on, Crimson Peak, Pacific Rim, and Shape are visually completely controlled.
In that perspective, how you reach the emotion?
Remember this, when I was a child, I was reading comic books, but I was also reading an encyclopedia of art, and I was watching movies. To me, the greatest emotions I've felt are when I am seeing an image and feeling a piece of music, you know? They move me. The plot and the story can move you once or twice. But once you know what happens, what moves you is the emotional content of the audiovisual, you know? Is the way the eyes make contact, the way the head turns with a piece of music. It's something more than what we share with theater or with novels. And I think that emotion is always alive. You know, look, the closest it came to being dried and mounted, to me, was during Mimic, in the sense that the control of the image was separate from the plot, or completely separate, you know? But then I learned to join them a little, and that's what I learned. But the emotion is always there. You're making the movie because it means something to you. It means something to you. Crimson Peak was sold as a horror movie, and it wasn't. It was gothic romance. The people that love it for what it is, not for what it was sold as. Pacific Rim was sold without showing the monsters until the last week.
That's terrible, because if I've seen Pacific Rim being a kid, I went crazy. I would probably went crazy.
That's the thing. Somebody said, there was a great review of Blade 2, the Village Voice. I think it was Jay Hoverman. And the review was, the only thing remotely terrifying about Blade 2 is that it's the same filmmaker that did Devil's Backbone. How can he do one sublime piece and then this crass, brutal, commercial piece? And I thought, the beauty is, I make one type of movie for one type of audience, but the audience that watches Blade 2 at age 11, it will forever be in love with that movie. If you watch Hellboy at age 10, you're always going to be in love. The way I love Harryhausen, or I love, you know, and I'm always thinking there are two types of audience. And the audience that loves Pacific Rim, 5 years later, you meet them again on Shape of Water.
To conclude, because we have to be after Crimson Peak, you were quite disappointed by the box office.
I was destroyed.
Yes. You were reborn with Shape of Water. And what did you change? Because there is something a little bit less determinist, you know, in the writing. A little bit, not generous, but a little bit more direct to the audience.
Well, it's the first time the emotion is unfiltered. Like, I have a mentor, a director called Felipe Casals in Mexico, and he said, you finally exhaled. You finally exhaled. Meaning, for 9 movies I've been doing, and Shape of Water is the first time. First time in 25 years, I exhaled.
And how, during the shooting, did you approach things and actors differently? How?
Completely.
How?
It's hard to describe, but what I did is I thought this is another final movie, you know? Because, and I said, everything matters, and I'm going to go to places that I am afraid of going. The sexual dimension of Shape of Water, I wouldn't have done.
Before.
Know, there's a little bit of sex in Crimson Peak, but it's all weird and oblique. And
Devil's Backbone also.
Devil's Backbone has a little, but
it's sick. It's not healthy. It's not joyous.
It's not joyous. And I thought, I want this movie to be about life, not about death or loss. It's about life. And every choice I made was for that. I shot it like a musical, and I shot it with the colors that made it come alive, and I shot it with an innocence that you get when you shoot your first movie.
Yeah.
And I said, if I do, here's what I thought. Okay, I've done 9 movies, and I'm here. If I do a 10th movie with the same tools that I did my first 9, why do I do it? I should take a vacation. I said, let me do a movie that does something completely different emotionally. And that's where I went. You know, and it's the decisions on how do you work with actors, how do you work with the musician, how do you work, it was all for life. It's a switch change. I would say it's for therapy, helped a lot, I don't know. But something I really said, I want to make, what I felt is this. The world had been changing in the last decade in a horrible way, in a way that we believe the worst of people in an instant, in a way that we want to kill something we have loved in an instant, in a way that we think everything, and I said, I want to put a song in the world. And I think all the other movies are symphonic or quartets or whatever, but this is the first song I make. Pan's Labyrinth would be a lullaby, but for a dead boy, for a dead child. But Shape of Water is the first song. I wanted the energy of a song that comes on the radio in your car, and you pump it up and you sing. You know, so the impulses of the image creation are much more joyous, much more light, you know, and completely scary. Because the most scary thing an artist can do in the world now is to be sincere and to be emotional. Those are two choices that are incredibly naked to go into the world. And some people will never like it. They'll go, and that's okay. But fortunately, the movie connected from the start. You know, there was a moment in which I started playing the movie and I started crying in the same 3-4 places, and I still cry in the same 3-4 places.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
We'll finish with black.
Yeah.